Welcome to episode 3, season 2 of the Right Stuff, the Empire Games Blood Bowl podcast. We're back this week with a special guest star. You want to introduce yourself?
I've been relegated to guest star status again.
I guess we should probably work this off mic about how this is now Chase's podcast and you're just allowed on here sometimes.
Yeah, well, I guess so. I have attended to my legal matters and to keep it as mysterious for the listeners at home as possible. All I will say is that I am no longer engaged.
Yeah. So the league, we're catching up from a few unexpected delays. I think it's worth mentioning real fast just so that everybody's on the same page. There was a little bit of an unexpected delay. Travis was in the hospital. We wish him a speedy recovery. That was certainly, I'm sure he wasn't planning it. So, but he told me that he was actually eager to play Blood Bowl, which is how I knew he was deathly ill. So,
yeah. Obviously, we're ready for him to get back, get some games going in, just so we have more to talk about. Maybe we're being selfish about it.
Yeah, but, could be a little bit.
We want everyone to be perfectly happy and healthy before they show up and are subjected to misery.
Yeah, that's true. Our discussion topic this week is about evaluating the game states. And we'll dive into that after we get through the recaps. So let's start at the top of the games for last week. We've got the Barbarians have a 2-0 victory over Rag and Bone. Was that the expectation that you had for that game?
Not necessarily. Obviously, there is going to be a little bit of a strength imbalance there. You've got a lot of strength 4 pieces with that with the Barbarians. Looking at the tour play recap of the game, it seemed like by the end of the game, it was fairly even outside of the score, like as far as casualties go between the two teams. But it seemed like it started off kind of favoring Ide. So he was able to kind of work that to his advantage, get some players off the field, have numbers, and then score. And Sean just wasn't able to kind of overcome that.
Yeah, from what I heard, they were playing a game of sevens at one point, and then they continued to lose players. So I think there were a lot of KOs that weren't shown in tour play. It was just like any time a model hit another model, it just took it off the pitch, right?
Yeah, that is like the one thing of tour play. Obviously, for us observing, it would be nice to see knockouts, but it would also be the most tedious thing on the planet.
It would be very tedious, yeah.
To try to track.
Yeah,
so
and
understandable.
Imagine having tour play roll your KOs for you too. Like I'm fine rolling my KOs and my guy's not coming back in the game, but if a damn computer was telling me I couldn't use my players, I'm gonna get mad.
Yeah, it's like losing a fan.
Yeah.
At the end of a game.
Right. Like okay, yeah, all right, yeah. They really hated that 2-1 loss. Okay, and the fans abandoned me. We've got a Realm Gate Marauder 2-2 tie against the Loki Rat Bastards. And I watched a good chunk of this game, and there was a whole lot of Blood Bowl happening in this game.
Yeah, it looked like more blood than bowl from the side.
Yeah, I think Fred could have pushed his beat 'em up advantage in a couple of different ways in this game, and he might have gotten to 10 casualties if he had specifically targeted some snotlings. But turn 1, Bomber blew himself up for Austin, which was really funny. But he wasn't removed from the pitch. He just fumbled and exploded. Later on, Austin tried to use Bomber to free up somebody, and Bomber was wildly inaccurate because he was based and it was sunny. So the bomb scatters back, blows up 3 people, including Bomber again. So Bomber was had an absolute atrocious game, which makes me wonder why I have to play against Bombers that are always deadly accurate. But the thing about this game is that it showed how good Underworld is at scoring with time pressures.
Yeah. Looking at it, it seemed like Fred had looked. Having not seen any of the game, it looked like Fred had a pretty commanding like had a strong command of the game for like a majority of each half, and then he scored, and he just left too much time for Austin to answer.
Yeah, right. Fred said in the second half, like when he was ahead 2-1, he couldn't really stall. He wasn't in a position where he could stall, which obviously isn't where you want to be if you're trying to win the game.
Right.
So Austin, I mean, I think Austin's doing a really good job of playing the situation, right? And has done an excellent job of like staying in games where he is getting the stuffing beat out of him. So
yeah, obviously, like, going into that with, if you have gotten 6 casualties against you and you get out of the draw, you gotta feel amazing about that game.
Absolutely. All right, we've got the Little Titans and a 1-0 victory over the Title Terror. I think this starts the theme for this week, which was a bad week for the Lizard teams.
Yeah. Very true. Looking from this game, the thing I saw was Nabla was putting in some work. Chainsaw pretty good against a team that has a bunch of like 10 armor pieces on it, or even lower armor like stuff. It's just good against things that need an armor roll.
Yeah, and no, if you can get to Nabla and you hit him, then you're likely to take him off the pitch. I think the major problem here was that he was probably behind, right? Like Clay was probably behind, and then Snotlings get extra players, so you can just create screens of dudes around Nabla. You knock down whoever you're going to foul. Nabla walks over there, hits him with a chainsaw, and then you've got a cloud of Snotlings. Unlike, say, Elves or even 3 agility teams, the Snotlings are a very effective screen against Sauruses.
Right.
Because even though they don't subtract from the dodge rolls, you would still need a 5 to dodge where you're going to go. And so you can't really just get to Nabla. If you were like an Elf player, you could make a couple of 2-ups and get through some Snotling tackle zones and then go knock them over in an attempt to take them off the table. But I don't think you have that option here. You'd have to do maybe some 1 dice with some skinks, and it's not going to feel good.
Yeah.
So.
And even like the way that Juan plays this team, he plays the Snotling positionals, which are not titchy.
Yeah,
so,
and can interfere
for no good reason. But I don't want to get into that rant right now. It was hard for me to keep my eyes open it's just hard in general for me to keep my eyes open looking at a tour play recap of a Snotling game.
Yeah.
Because they're just all the same. They're so boring to talk about. I think we should just stop giving them oxygen.
That's true. We do have to use the bully pulpit here to push people away from these talentless stunty teams. So our next game is Those Who Wander in a tie 2-2 against the Metropolitan Dumpster Rats.
Yeah. Would you qualify this as like an upset?
It's certainly not the expected outcome. And I actually am pretty proud of the number of touchdowns that Barbie has scored with the Skaven team. And I think that's the major difference between this time around and when she was playing Dark Elves. I think she's a lot happier with a team that can put points on the board. Even if you lose or tie or whatever, if you got some touchdowns in a game, you feel like you were participating.
Right.
Regardless of whatever the outcome might be.
Yeah.
And I think this also reinforces my point on Will's team having a lot of value skills, having a lot of like ball handling skills, but a little short on the deadlier side of the spectrum when it comes to skills. Because he got 3 casualties against Skaven, and you would expect 3 casualties just playing against Skaven.
Yeah, that was my thing looking at it, was just like, I remember the previous season that Will had played this team. In our last game, when I was playing Nobility, he got 7 casualties on me. That team was a just murder machine. So, but most of the players he brought over, like you said, is very good at handling the ball.
Which is, I mean, to be fair, I think it's easier to make your Chaos team more murdery than it is to make your team better at handling, touchdowns and whatnot. So
yeah, I think this is a team that if you're in that division, you want to play him early before he starts getting more like mighty blow, tackle, more of those just offensive skills.
Yeah. Right, and when your team can handle the ball, you can get a lot of SPP. Now, it does mean he needs like a disproportionate amount of SPP to level up those already leveled up guys, right? So it'll be an interesting position he'll find himself in. I think he's shored up some of the Chaos Chosen, though. I think there's more block on the team now, and that in general makes you more deadly.
Right.
We've got a 4-1 victory for the Gondolin Glory Hounds versus the Dead Gooners. And I feel like Jim's elves were probably just running circles around Phoebe in this game. I don't love an elf matchup when you're playing Necro because their team can outposition you. Yeah. And Necro is a team that doesn't like to be pushed around, but it doesn't like it when its opponent can just kind of choose where it wants to go, right?
Right. Yeah, looking at this game from the inducements at the start, Phoebe got to take Wilhelm.
Yeah, it's good.
And Wilhelm just never showed up doing anything.
I watched Wilhelm fail a dodge, so I didn't see that.
Wilhelm did do something, I guess.
I mean, I like Wilhelm better against the bashier teams. He's not bad against the elves, but he's not amazing, right? He's got wrestle. And wrestle and claws is actually kind of like a non-bow, which it's like I don't like taking wrestle on werewolves. You want them to be standing, and yeah, I mean, if you wrestle somebody to the ground, you don't get to make armor breaks. Now, it doesn't. I mean, he's pretty good against block dodge people at least, right? But you're not getting the armor rolls, and I think that's important. So,
yeah. Obviously, like I think the one thing about this team right now is like missing. Phoebe's still currently short like a ghoul and a wraith. I'm missing some positionals. So, like, just having Wilhelm be, like, an extra ball carrier.
Yeah, you don't want him to score your touchdown in a league, right? You don't. That's the one thing you run into is you don't actually want him stealing your SPP from your guys that desperately need it, right? Yeah. The thing about Necro is that it's a solid team, but it can be difficult to level pieces up. Werewolves and ghouls end up hogging a lot of SPP. Wraiths and flesh golems really need the MVPs and casualties so that they can advance. And so I would hate to have to score a touchdown with Wilhelm. It's different than like if you were in a playoff situation and your goal is to win the game at all costs. But in a league game, I mean, Phoebe didn't take any damage here, right? She actually inflicted damage on Jim. So she actually helped out the league, which is a consolation prize for sure. She got a strength down on a catcher who was about to be a blodger. So I'm not sad to see that piece go. I don't know about anybody else.
Yeah, like definitely agree with all that. But still, yeah, like 9 touchdowns in 2 weeks.
That's a lot of touchdowns.
Pretty impressive. This team is definitely standing out. Definitely one of the standout teams from this division. There is another team that I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah. The Tryhards have a 3-1 win over the Renegades of Funk. Right after this game, I asked Sean if the Chaos Renegades were going to break him, and he said, no hesitation, yes. It's not like playing ogres, right? Your big guys don't have loner on an ogre team, and on Renegades they do. And that difference is huge.
Yeah, and then also, like, if you lose your big guys, what are you left with? It's like you're
left with crappy human linemen.
Yeah, you're a human team without good positionals.
Right, without blitzers.
So,
yeah, for sure. I can see this matchup going sideways, right? I think Dark Elves are a team that can survive a disproportionate amount of damage trying to be inflicted back. 9 armor on your linemen, lots of blitzers with block starting. Ness carried his team over, so he had some skills to go around. Ness even had Dauntless to help fight into some of these big guys if needed be. I think he probably just ends up in a position in this game where he's able to outmaneuver Sean. And Sean was telling me he had a lot of turns where he'd activate like one of his big guys. And you can't win a game if you're activating 8 6 models, and the elf team is activating all 11, right? So
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Hopefully that can turn around at some point. I don't know. Maybe eventually spike a couple.
well, you've got the hard part out of the way, right? Like
Yeah.
block is on the big guys, and if you have a couple of games, if the team functions the way ogres can, where you don't bonehead early and you obliterate the opponent's team, and then you guys start boneheading when you're up, 5 models or whatever, then you still win the game.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. All right. Next thing we got is the other.
Team to watch.
Yeah, other team to watch. The Darn Tootin playing short elves, basically, from the way this box score looked out. 3-0 win over Taisho Karan. I think there were 0 casualties for the Dwarves in this game.
It was like over the first half, right? There were no casualties at all. I think he got 1.
Yeah, maybe 1. Oh, he did get 1. Yeah. 1 casualty for a Dwarf team. Not really what you'd expect, but
Yeah, I mean, Slan's got a lot of 9 armor, right? And Chris only has 1 catcher, so that's like the player that is most likely to get hurt on the Slan team because they've got the least amount of armor.
yeah.
So, yeah, and kind of hard to tell what happened early in this game. Got a brief overview from Jurgen literally minutes before we started recording this, and he said that Chris popped the ball loose multiple times on the first drive. But Jurgen was able to eventually punch it in and score. And it was one of those where he would pop the ball loose. Jurgen would spend like his whole team resecuring it, and then the next turn, Chris would just pop the ball loose again. And that's like the disgusting thing about Slan is they're like vampires in that way, where they like always have an attack on the ball. At the very minimum, a 1 die or whatever. Mm-hmm. And apparently Jurgen got hit with a diving tackle somewhere in the game.
Oh,
so
yeah.
But I think Jurgen was able to grind that advantage and then take a really close game and then make it not close there at the end.
Yeah. These runners on that team are terrifying.
Yeah, strength up on 1. That's horrifying. So yeah, that's a disgusting player.
Yeah. Once again, very happy not to be in that division. That is our last game for that division. Now we go to the other division, Total Body. We got Arbor Vitae with a 2-0 win over Swamp People.
Yeah, continuing the bad week for Lizards here. The War Dancer went absolutely sick house in this game. I think this was like a really good case study for bullying the skinks. That's long been the game plan against Lizards. Mm-hmm. And Wayne really embodied that here.
Yeah. 5 casualties.
Yeah. 4 on skinks.
Yeah. Not really where you want to be.
Yeah. The Skoda managed to get some casualties in the second half, but by then you're probably down all of your skinks, right? Yeah. Skoda's probably lucky this is only 2-0, right? This could easily cascade into something a lot worse.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what you're supposed to do in this situation, right? I didn't get to watch this game, so I'm not sure what happened here. But I think this was like a combination of getting outmaneuvered. So I know Skoda's looking at playing in this league to learn some, and so I'm hoping this game was instructive for him, in some capacity. So
yep. Next game up, we got another game that was bad for a team with a lot of strength 4 pieces and a bunch of little stunty guys. The Legion of Honesty, Honor, and Friendship against mostly Nerdlings. This one was like an early concession.
Yeah, so I can I don't know the full thing that happened here. There is a bit of asterisk on this game. Apparently something came up, some sort of family emergency or whatever, and Bryson had to leave in the middle of it. Chase, being the gracious and upstanding citizen that he is, selflessly took the win. But it wasn't. I know some people might look at that and think like, oh, he was about to get tabled or something like that. But from what Chase said, there wasn't really like a whole lot of damage done to the other team. It was just something came up. Chase was in position to score more or less already, and so he punched it in. They just kind of they basically said, okay, and they kind of shook hands on it and moved on, right? Life goes on, right? Like if there's anything we've learned from the first couple of weeks of this season is that there's life outside of Blood Bowl, and sometimes it creeps into Blood Bowl. So,
yep. All right, next game up is Rookwood Conspiracy versus Necromantic Estate Hellhounds. A 2-1 win for Jennings with the Necro.
Yeah, this was happening about the same time. It started a little after the Austin and Fred game. So I was bouncing between the two games. So I missed some of the Austin and Fred stuff, the particulars of the second half, because the first half was like fairly interesting. Josh had the ball on his ogre boneheaded turn 1, and Jennings blitzed the ogre with his flesh golem and casualtied it right away. Rolls an armor down on the ogre, and Josh uses the apothecary, gets a niggling injury, which I think, you lose the ogre for a game, but you would much rather have a 10 armor ogre than a 9 armor ogre, because a 10 armor ogre is way better at his job than a 9 armor one would be. I think Jennings had like a slight edge throughout this whole game and maintained it. Clearly he had an advantage on injuries, but Josh gave some good hits back, and actually took out like a really experienced Wraith for Jennings' next game.
Obviously, the ogre going down. Also, there was a Blitzer with 3 skills. I think they went down for the humans for the next game as well. So that's we'll see how that ends up in future weeks. But the 2-1 against Jennings, that's still a solid showing.
Yeah, and in college football terms, that's what we call a quality loss, right?
All right, up next, I got my game. So, What a Drag versus the Wolfpack. This game literally cost me an arm and a leg. As I was walking, story time, as I was walking into the building, I hit a curb in a weird way and fell and just scraped the entirety of my leg up and was bleeding and had to get wrapped up and bandaged in the kitchen of the store before going out and playing. So that was interesting. Not the best omen going into a game where I need to dodge away from a bunch of doors.
Right.
Because I cannot dodge myself. So how am I going to coach people to dodge? But it was an interesting game. The first half, I kicked off to Warren and was able to kind of stall out enough to prevent the score. And in the second half, I was able to get the ball and kind of move, and Warren was really good at kind of positioning to stop me from being able to make any big advances forward. So ideally, I wasn't I'm not a big staller, especially with the Amazons, where it's in the boat of my players that I want to advance need a lot of SPP to get any extra skills. So I want to score as many times as possible. I don't want to sit around. I much rather would have scored quick and then tried to make an attempt to steal the ball and then go score again.
Yeah.
But just the way the game played out, I didn't get to score super early. So it was turn 6. And when I kicked off, rolled a timeout. So got to a point where Warren had enough time to kind of make a score. He had a runner that was 6 squares away from the end zone, and I had used up rerolls on my offensive drive. So I had to blitz with a Jaguar that could get out. I had to dodge away from a tackle piece. Luckily made it and was able to just push the runner back. So I was already looking at okay, well, that's a rush at least. He had 1 reroll left. And then I was able to dodge. I had to dodge away from it was either the second runner or a blitzer, but did not have tackle. So I had to dodge into a tackle zone for the first one on a 4, rolled a 6. And then the second dodge was not in a tackle zone. I rolled a 2 And then I rolled a 3, and I was like, oh, wait. I was like, at first I was like, I thought I needed a 4. I was like, oh, I guess I'm down. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Not down. So I was able to get around and mark the runner on the other side.
And that caused enough dice rolls.
Yeah, basically it put it in a position where it left him with like 1 die blocks, because he could either go through and he had gotten one person to mark the jaguar outside of the runner, so he could have like brought up one other person to get 1 dice on the runner, get a 1 die on the runner, and then have someone come up to try to blitz the thrower off. But just because of the way it's set up, he had to run someone up. He decided to run someone up, blitz the thrower with the runner on 1 die, and that's skull in the skull.
Okay.
And that was the last turn of the game.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it was super, super interesting, super tight, intense game.
Yeah, dwarves are an ugly matchup for Amazons, obviously, and I've played it a couple of times, in my year of playing Amazons and tournament Blood Bowl.
Yeah.
But knowing which of their players don't have tackle, that's where you can actually use your skills. I leveraged that quite a bit in those games.
Yeah, that was I think the biggest thing to me was I like Warren's initial list. Like, I think I liked getting the Mighty Blow on the Blitzers, because like you just need a little bit of that. Kick was really good against me, because I did have on the ball, but like Kick being able to kind of send him back.
It still time walks you in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very much so. And then the one guard that he brought over was like actually kind of a pain to play around.
Yeah.
When I was trying to throw my blocks. But
yeah.
The biggest thing was, and it's the thing I found with playing doors a lot, is like strength mismatches on like very mobile pieces can be really aggravating.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest thing, was the Jaguars being able to run around, like being able to like dodge away from a blitzer, go and hit somebody else, and then run around, give a guard assist to like the other blocker, and then all of a sudden you're just like so far ahead. That was the one thing, is that there were no Troll Slayers on the team, so there was nothing that could by itself potentially equalize.
Yeah. Looking for a lot of assists then.
Yeah, and it's hard when you have 2 guard pieces that want to kind of stay next to each other.
Right.
So,
we've got a bad choices, losing 0-2 against Clobber and Catastrophe. This is the grand finale for Lizard Meltdown Week.
yeah.
Halen's team apparently just completely quit on him in the middle of the game. And apparently tour play is not listed correctly here. Apparently there were multiple Sauruses who died in this game, and Halen just said, I'm going to pull the plug here, and you got this one. I'll go find something productive to do with my time that isn't watching more Sauruses die.
Yeah, I would not even... I think saying middle of the game is generous. I think that a Saurus died on turn 1. That the rolls were just 10 into 10 into 16, Apothecary 16.
Jeez.
So everything beyond that was just... And this wasn't a game where there was like a mismatch. Or it wasn't like a random bomber that was able to like do a bunch of extra damage.
This is just your 1 in 20,000 games where something like this could happen.
Yeah. It was a... Very quick, there were like 3 Sauruses in the casualty box. There were like 5 players in the knockout box. I think there was a skink and a Saurus left on the field.
Good Lord. Yeah. Halen is apparently thinking about re-rolling into Nobility. I think that'll actually help the league as far as diversity is concerned. So we'll have an extra team kind of in the mix that aren't Lizards.
Yeah.
So we have one game from week 3 to talk about real fast. The Tryhards lost 0-1 against the Little Titans of Mayhem, and looks like it was a rough game for the Dark Elves. I see aforementioned notes on Snotling tour play results where there's just a whole bunch of casualties on Morg and Trolls and Fouls and.
Yeah. I wrote down 2 words for notes of this. They are Morg and Yawn. That is all I have to say.
Yeah. And I think, a 0-1, this game was probably close to a tie somewhere in there then, right? Presumably, you could create a board state with Dark Elves where you might be able to sneak somebody past the team and maybe punch the ball into the end zone with a little bit of careful play. A lot of these, the thing about Snotlings is like if they have the option, like if they receive and you have to kick to them, you're just going to get beat on for a whole half.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see how the Snotling teams look at the end of the season. I suspect they'll look exactly the same. They'll just get more inducements because the other teams will have. Well, we'll ask the question: is there a limit to the number of inducements that you can take, where they start falling off, as far as effectiveness?
Yeah. Yep. That's like probably like halfway through the season, we'll start getting into like more giant territory.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the season, it's gonna be like 2 big star players and a giant and like Chef or something like that.
Yeah, I think the Chef is a bad inducement for Snotlings. I think you're better off spending all that money on Wizard, bribes, the ref. I actually think Think the Fixer and the ref let you like argue to keep your dudes in the game on a 4 if your opponent is like, your opponent can counter, like they can take a ref at some point, and that's usually the right call, just so that you have odds to catch people, especially if they are trying to do like the Black Gobbo plan, right? So we are going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back with the In Memoriam section, and yeah, enjoy this. And what's the ads this week? What's the funny ads this week, Yannie?
I hope it's BetterHelp.
BetterHelp. It's available for you.
Yeah.
And we're back to say goodbye to a pile. There was a pile of deaths this time.
Yep.
We have Genghis Khan turned into a zombie. Black Orc for the Dub Barbarians.
Now Gingham Khan.
Yeah. Turned into a piece of attractive fabric now. We've got Kratos, who was a Goblin Bruiser lineman for the Barbarians. And he's dead now. There was a Snotling. There were a couple Snotlings that died this week. We had Frongnick, the Snotling for the Loki Rat Bastards. Loki Rat Bastards also lost President Loki. Just insert your own joke there. That doesn't get us in trouble. Just make your own.
R.I.P. Trevor Moore.
Luca, a skink runner for Swamp People, died at the hands of a war dancer. You lost a journeyman.
I did. That journeyman got a casualty in that game.
No, it's
also,
a shame.
Right before that.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
I hate losing. I hate losing a player who gets SPP, like especially a journeyman, like this one who clearly wanted to be on the team.
Yep. Yeah.
There was a Saurus named Bamone, and then some number of other Sauruses who also died in that game. We're not entirely sure, but those were all the last stand of bad choices all around. Yeah. A truly an Extinction-Level event.
Yeah. Yeah. We also had Sharkbait, who was a skink for the Title Terrorists, to add to the list of Lizardmen.
Yeah, the
Lizardmen bodies.
Yeah, there's like almost a whole dead Lizardmen team.
Yeah.
And then Pun Boon Boss, a Snotling for the Little Titans of Mayhem, died.
Yeah. Only one honorable Snotling died.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's the In Memoriam section. Just an absolute pile of bodies this time around.
Yeah. I was looking at the stats earlier now. They have that lovely statistics bar on tour play. So we've had, I think it's like 26 games played. How many deaths have we had in 26 games? 15.
Jeez.
So we're averaging over a death every other game.
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically death a game, right? Because is it total games? How's it work?
It's
26
total.
Okay.
26
I didn't know if it was like you were dividing the league in half, right? Because technically, anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, that's a substantial amount of dead players.
Yeah.
I actually think that's probably above average.
I would say so, yeah.
Yes. There's been a lot of zombies made.
Yeah. And one missed opportunity for a zombie.
Yeah.
To be fair. Maybe this was the season to play Nurgle.
Could have been, yeah. Could have had your pile of rotters. All right, we're gonna move on to our discussion section here, and this week we're talking about evaluating the game state. I actually think the rarest game state of all in Blood Bowl is true parity, right? Like feeling that both sides are equal. I think that's very, very rare in the game.
Yeah.
I think most of the time you're going to be a little behind or a little ahead. Like even when you sit down before any dice are rolled, the way the rosters are, you're probably going to feel like I've got a slight advantage or a slight disadvantage. And as soon as you start rolling dice, that's going to fall apart. But I think that's pretty common. Just the way skills match up or team differential. There's all kinds of stuff that I think will give you a slight advantage or a slight disadvantage. I actually think being a lot behind or a lot ahead is pretty common in Blood Bowl, especially after dice have started rolling. You can think, hey, I'm in a pretty unlosable situation here, and then you keep rolling more dice, and then suddenly that was not true anymore.
Right, yeah. That is a thing where you can easily put yourself into a situation of comfort, and that's the thing that happens with a lot of games, I think, where especially people who are playing bashier teams will have a cage set up. They have their cage set up, and they're just like, okay, this is fine. I'm just going to sit here in the middle of the field for a couple turns, not really worry about advancing the ball, and then it gets to turn 7, and then there's something in the way. You're like, I do not have enough blitzes or blocks to actually get through. And now you're kind of stuck.
Right. Yeah, and I think I mean there's probably a whole discussion on playing to your outs that is for like a future episode maybe, or maybe it's part of something else. But I think evaluating where you are in a given state, like how many turns is it going to take you to score from where you are?
Right.
Like what's the maximum? How close do I have to be for 2 go-for-its to score? Right, and if you run out of rerolls, 2 go-for-its is actually, it's like you shouldn't necessarily bank on that to give you the ability to score, right? Yeah. Where you need to be to roll no dice to score is like a really important marker. 2 dice, a handoff, whatever it might be, right? Like a lot of times, I think good players are going to make it so that you always have to roll dice to score. Hopefully, that's the position I want to be in if I'm playing defense. Like force my opponent to make the rolls, but if you're if you're further ahead, then sometimes you can get into a place where you don't have to roll dice to score, and that's pretty cozy. And I think there's a danger in being cozy in the game.
Yes.
If your opponent is like willing to do something crazy, and they make their rolls to stop you, then suddenly you can find the roles reversed.
Yeah, I think that's like a thing that happens a bunch where you're like, oh, I'm ahead. I can make like this kind of greedy block. Like I can like burn this reroll, whatever it is. And the way I like to think about it is when we were doing the coverage for the championship game, we were talking about like the ESPN probability graph.
Yep.
If you ever watched like Magic coverage, they had like the advantage bar that would go back and forth between players. And I think it's okay to think about your game sort of using that metric if it helps you kind of visualize. I think it's especially good if you're behind, where you're like, okay, what do I need to do to get to parity? What do I need to do to get ahead? But I think if you visualize yourself as ahead, you've got to think about what is the most catastrophic thing that can happen here, and not necessarily plan for that to happen, but like if something happens here, like what am I leaving myself exposed to? Like basing a player in a certain way, or it's like, do I need to base this player? Because like the thing I found is like the easiest way to prevent yourself from getting into these positions is limiting the number of blocks your opponent gets.
And sometimes your opponent rattles off like 3 lucky blocks in a row,
yeah,
and suddenly you're down 3 players.
Exactly, yeah. So just being able to say like, okay, I can't prevent my opponent from blitzing. Like they'll still get a blitz, but if that's the only block they have, how do I mitigate that blitz going wrong and then like peeling a player or something like that? Just being able to get that vision trying to dictate as much as you can to your opponent.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in control, take advantage of that a little bit and be like, okay, here's what I'm going to give you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a big thing about advantage in this game is knowing where to press it and foul, or where to back off and make sure you've got your full team available to you, right? Because I think if you get a little bit ahead, that's a great time to foul so that you can get a lot further and really disproportionately affect the player advantage. However, sometimes if you're a little bit ahead, you foul, you get caught, your dude gets ejected, suddenly you're back to parity. And if you try to like foul again, you get caught back to back and your guy gets tossed out. Now you're like down on players. You kind of like threw away an advantage that you might have had. And I mean, it a lot of it comes down to like risk tolerance, right? I mean, that's just Blood Bowl is how much risk tolerance can you sustain for as long as you can. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to vary from people to people. They're gonna whatever it is, I think you have to be consistent, right? If you're a person who always fouls when you're ahead, then, never deviate from that. If you're somebody who situationally fouls, because I would put myself in that category. Very rarely would I foul when I'm ahead on the board, unless it's a player that I never want to see again. Right. And that's in which case I'm leveraging an opportunity for like further in the season to try to help myself with some sort of playoff advantage if I'm trying to get rid of like a really skilled player. Maybe I'll throw a foul there.
Right. Yeah. Being able to have that intuition, I think, is the biggest thing. It's like, I think, being able to look and see like, how does this go wrong for me is important. If you're ahead, if you're behind, looking at like, okay, what is the most devastation I can wreak? On my opponent?
Right. At some point, you can just throw away whatever advantage, like if you don't care about the outcome of the game, asking yourself, what can I do to ruin my opponent's season, is certainly a thing to do, right? I think that's the beauty of Blood Bowl, is that sometimes you can create your own win condition. My win condition is get rid of some 50 SPP player, and a lot of people will look at that as a victory, even if the box score says otherwise. All right. We are going to check out some games that are coming up in the next week. Which games are you excited about?
I got a couple from each division. Leg day, I think I'm really interested in seeing Taisha Karan and the Barbarians.
I was right there with you.
Yeah. I think that the crazy goblin, maybe we can see him do something.
Yeah, and I think Ide's a little banged up, and Chris's team's probably taken like a little bit of damage too, but he didn't get nearly as hurt against John as he may have. He could have taken a lot more damage, right? And so the mobility difference in this game is substantial. So I think this is an interesting game because I think Chris has a chance to get back in the season, right? He started the season with 2 losses. I'd started the season with 2 wins. This is a good momentum shift for Chris if he can swing the win here.
Well, the other game I'm looking at there is the Gondolin Glory Hounds and Those Who Wander. That one to me is going to be the story of just like, is Will able to secure the ball and hold on to it?
Now, traditionally, Chaos Chosen is actually a halfway decent team against Elves. Like, if you go look at tournament data, Chaos Chosen disproportionately does well against Elf teams, and that's because you can put the ball on a 4-strength dude. And if you don't have strip ball handy, then your options to get the ball away from a Chaos Chosen are limited, and then the team can kind of just push through whatever elves you put in the way. I think this is last time we honed in on a Will Jim matchup. We inadvertently cursed Jim. I'm hoping to avoid that this time around. But if Will's got a solid chance to beat him here, because he's got a team that can secure the ball I don't know that he can do enough damage fast enough to Jim's team to just like put the game out of reach for Jim. I could see a classic Jimming occur here. I'm not sure. I'm just not sure who gets to be the Jim here, Jim or Will. So.
Right. Yeah. Any other leg day matches?
I didn't have any of the other ones. I think those are the two big ones there, right? I think the Will Jim one. It's two teams with winning records currently, and that's got playoff potential down the line, right? Will with a win here moves himself ahead of Jim. Jim with a win here probably sets the pace for the rest of the league, right? A Jim win here means I think the vast majority of people in this division are going to try to catch up to him. And the only roadblock at that point would be Jurgen's dwarf team. Whenever that game occurs, that's a game for the ages.
Yeah.
But I hope that's like a week 12 or week 13 matchup, right? And both these teams are just absolute juggernauts then. That would just be an incredible game.
Yeah, I think we have to stream that one.
Yeah,
possible.
yeah.
Get some regular season.
Yeah, so when Jurgen's 5 strength runner and Jurgen's 4 strength 2 agility runner squaring off against Jim's 5 strength high elf blitzer, and I'm just assuming they're going to get all the lucky level ups since they already have some good players on the team.
Right. All right. Other division. What you got? What games are you?
Which one do you think I picked? I picked the Necromantic Stake Hellhounds versus the Arbor Vitae.
Yeah.
I went back and I looked, and historically, Jennings has one win against Wayne in league play, and it was a preseason game against Halflings. And this is like a while back.
Right.
If somebody wants to win a game, I think it's Jennings. Since he's had to play against Halflings a whole bunch of times. And so he gets to sit down and play some honest, God-fearing Blood Bowl without the use of star players.
Still has to face a tree, though.
Still got to face a tree. It's one tree. That's a little bit different than two.
Right. Yeah, that was the one that stood out the most to me. Like, obviously, the last matchup in the end of the previous season, I don't think it was super satisfying to either player.
Right.
So we get some closure for.
Yeah, they've had a couple draws. They've definitely had a couple draws. But yeah, I mean, other than that, it's been like Halfling victories over Jennings. And so I'm sure he's eager to play against Knock Griff in a matchup for once. So
yeah, I guess I'm looking forward to my game this week. I'm playing against Rookwood Conspiracy. So the first season I played with the Amazons, that was the last game of the season, and we drew, and it was like pretty much dead even. It was like 1-1. Each of us got 2 casualties. So
yeah.
Looking forward to getting to play that human team again. I think the only downside for me is, I guess the upside is he's missing a tackle blitzer, but because he's missing that player and the ogre, I'm going to be giving him money in like a fairly substantial amount. Where at this point in the season, I was really looking to expand my roster a little bit, pick up a third reroll.
But if you do that, you're moving them closer and closer to Griff.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at right now. I think I'm still probably going to pick up an extra player just because I might need it because he's got those kind of crazy blitzers. So
yeah, he does have some solid blitzers. He also, down that ogre, man, that really complicates things.
Yeah.
Now I'm interested. He could take right now. He could take Grombrindel, and Grombrindel's an awesome piece.
Right.
It's really good. If he goes to 260, he could take like Ivar. Ivar's not bad against Amazons.
Like block tackle guard.
Plus the ability to move a player a square means you end up getting extra blocks, and it's a really interesting positional skill because you can. It's like an extra go for it. It's like a sprint too. So yeah, you can do some interesting things with with a little bit of practice.
Yeah.
So now it means he'll probably go into the game with like 11 or 12, right? So you might be able to win like an attrition battle against them because he's got some tackle and some mighty blow, but that's just like a couple of pieces, and so it's one of those where both players might be alpha striking the deadliest players on the pitch, and then whoever is still standing after all that ends up being the victor.
Yeah, we will have to see. That'll be one I think we'll definitely get more into next week. So.
Yeah. Now there is a little bit of a traffic jam with games, which is why I don't have a recap of mine yet. We're hoping to get those games on the road. We're probably implementing a couple of emergency protocols to get the games going, just to try to have the league back on track from here. But I think that does it for this week. You got any parting words?
Just quick plug, last minute plug.
Oh yeah, for Palmetto Cup. We probably should lead off with plugs, really.
No, we want to get the people who we're only here for the real people who listened all the way to the end. But I don't want any fair weather people showing up for Palmetto Cup.
Yeah. But Palmetto Cup is the 28th. Mm-hmm. It's a team tournament, so grab a friend, head on down to Empire Games, play some Blood Bowl, and have a good time.
Yeah. Last year it was super fun. Even getting drawn in last minute. I'm going to be playing some practice games all this week, trying to figure out exactly what I am doing. So
yeah, I got a couple. There's like a team in my head that I kind of want to play, because I could take the list to Chaos Cup as well.
Okay.
But we got to figure out what the team, me and Jim are teaming up again. So we got to figure out what our team composition looks like, what covers what weaknesses and stuff like that. We'll probably talk about the team building next week.
Yeah.
So look forward to that.
Yep. Baked in topics. Gotta love that. Yeah. Well, I think that's going to do it for us this week. Very glad to come back and deprive Chase of any sort of joy he had doing the podcast. So, but if you enjoyed it, make sure that you're following, liking, subscribing, wherever it is, whatever platform you're listening on, since we're on pretty much all the platforms now. Go ahead and give us all that support. Helps keep going. And it's super great. You'll see it anywhere you look on YouTube, on Podlink. That's where we go for everything. But that will do it. So appreciate y'all listening. I'll catch you next week.
Yep. Nathan signing off.